Inflation can erode the purchasing power of your money. Hi there, welcome to Mainstream Millionaires, where we're making millionaires the new normal. Today we're going to talk about a topic that affects us all, inflation. We'll cover what it is, why it matters, and most importantly, how you can navigate it to secure your financial future. Warren Buffett once said, "Today, people who hold cash equivalents feel comfortable. They shouldn't. They have opted for a terrible long-term investment, one that pays virtually nothing and is certain to depreciate in value." Here's an example. Imagine you have a big jar of jelly beans and each jelly bean represents a piece of money. Now let's say you start putting more jelly beans into the jar without getting more stuff out. The jelly beans become less valuable because there are so many of them. This is kind of like what happens with inflation. When a country makes too much money and puts it into the economy, the value of the money goes down and things start to cost more. Simply put, inflation is the general increase in prices of goods and services over time. It basically means your money doesn't go as far as it used to. How do they figure all this out? Inflation is typically measured by tracking the changes in the prices of a selected basket of goods and services over time. Two commonly used indexes are the Consumer Price Index, CPI, and the Producer Price Index, PPI. The Consumer Price Index measures the average change over time in the prices paid by consumers for a set basket of goods and services, such as food, housing, transportation, and healthcare. The Producer Price Index, or PPI, tracks the average change over time in the prices received by producers, such as manufacturers or wholesalers, for their goods and services. It provides insight into cost changes before it ever reaches the consumer, you and me. The inflation rate is calculated by comparing the price for that basket of goods and services year over year. So basically, if they wanted to calculate it today, they would compare it to the same time last year. The difference is considered to be the inflation rate. While both Canada and the US measure inflation using similar methods, such as the Consumer Price Index, there can be differences in the specific items included in the basket of goods and services, as well as the weighting of those items. These minor differences can arise from variations in things such as consumption patterns and economic structures, but overall, the goal is still to accurately reflect the change in our cost of living. Now, you might wonder why inflation actually matters to you. Well, inflation can erode the purchasing power of your money, impacting your savings and your income. Think about it this way. If prices rise, the same amount of money buys you less stuff. Think of this adorable little munchkin, Zach. He loves Smarties and saves all his nickels to buy some Smarties each time his mama, that's me, takes him to the grocery store. One day, he noticed that the price of his little box of Smarties went up. Confused, Zach decided to investigate. He asked the store owner, why was the candy more expensive? The store owner scratched his head. "Well, Zach, it's like this. Our candy factory got hit with a big chocolate shortage. Since chocolate became so rare, it costs more to make Smarties now." Confused, he looked at his mama, who explained to him that this was the result of the good old economic law of supply and demand. Prices go up when things are in short supply. Even more confused, his mama bought him a box of Smarties. Hey everyone, I hope you've enjoyed this video so far. If you have, please hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below letting me know that you have subscribed, and I'll be sure to reply to you. So this little story leads us to wonder what causes inflation. Inflation can be caused by a variety of factors and actually is often the result of a combination of those factors. Here's a few. Demand pull inflation happens when demand exceeds supply, meaning when consumers are willing to buy more than what's available. Sellers may increase prices to balance the demand-supply equation. Cost push inflation occurs due to rising production costs, such as wages or raw materials. When businesses face higher costs, they might pass them on to consumers in the form of higher prices. Built-in inflation happens when workers demand higher wages to keep up with rising prices. If businesses grant those wage increases, they might raise prices to cover the increased labor costs. Central banks control the money supply and interest rates, which can influence inflation. If a central bank increases the money supply too rapidly, it can lead to too much money chasing too few goods, causing demand pull inflation. Supply chain disruptions, such as natural disasters or geopolitical conflicts, can also reduce the availability of goods and services. Other things, such as if people expect future inflation, they might adjust their behavior accordingly and demand higher wages, which can actually create a self-fulfilling cycle of rising prices. Changes in exchange rates can also affect the cost of imported goods. And an unbalanced government spending and taxation can also greatly influence inflation. In other words, a balanced budget is important. Inflation is so complex, but does that mean it's a bad thing? Moderate inflation is actually considered normal and even necessary for a healthy economy. In the US and Canada, a healthy inflation rate is generally around 2%. In 2022, the US experienced an inflation rate of a whopping 8.3% and Canada 7.59%, a 40-year high. At the time of making this video, it is sitting around 3.2 or 3.3 respectively. The Federal Reserve in the US and the Bank of Canada target an inflation rate of about 2% as it allows for gradual increases in prices without causing significant disruptions to the economic stability of the countries. This target is chosen because it provides a balance between avoiding deflation, falling prices, and preventing too much inflation that could harm people's purchasing power, financial well-being, and making long-term planning more difficult. You have to wonder, does inflation actually affect my income or savings? If prices of goods and services are rising, the purchasing power of your income will decrease. If your income does not keep up with inflation, you might find it more challenging to afford the same goods and services you were able to buy before. For example, if you usually spend $100 per week on groceries and inflation is at 3%, you now need $103 to buy the exact same basket of groceries. Some employers adjust their salaries periodically to account for inflation, but not all do, so it's important to consider its impact when you're planning your finances and to take steps to ensure your income keeps up with or exceeds the rate of inflation. It can also have an impact on your savings, again, by reducing your purchasing power over time. When prices go up, the same amount of money will buy fewer things, which also means that the value of your savings in terms of what you can purchase decreases. For example, if the inflation rate is 2% per year and you have $1,000 in savings, after a year of 2% inflation, you would need $1,020 to buy the exact same goods and services that $1,000 could buy before. If your savings aren't growing at least the rate of inflation, their value is diminishing. Hence Warren Buffett's quote we had at the beginning of this video, basically saying cash equivalents are certain to depreciate in value. So let's talk strategy. To combat inflation's impact on your savings, consider investing in assets that historically outpace inflation, like mutual funds and ETFs, or stocks, real estate, or bonds. Diversifying your investment portfolio can also help spread risk and increase your chances of not only maintaining, but also growing your wealth well beyond inflation. Some other ideas could include prioritizing your spending on essential items and finding ways to cut back on discretionary items. Negotiating your salaries or picking up a side hustle could also help, and make sure you have an emergency fund that covers 6 months worth of expenses, which provides a good buffer for you against unexpected financial challenges. Avoid debt, because this can become a much greater burden during periods of high inflation, and create long-term financial plans while considering the potential impact of inflation when estimating future expenses and goals. Stay informed about economic trends and how they may impact inflation, and educate yourself like you're doing right now. Remember that while these strategies can help you manage the impact of inflation, they come with their own risks and considerations. And also remember, while inflation is normal, extreme hyperinflation can wreak havoc. Central banks play a crucial role in managing inflation through monetary policies. One notable historical event involving inflation is the hyperinflation that occurred in Germany in the early 1920s when their economy faced severe challenges following World War I. The government, who needed to pay war reparations and debts, began printing more money to cover its expenses. However, this excessive printing of money led to a rapid and uncontrollable rise in prices. And as a result, the value of the German mark plummeted and prices soared to unimaginable levels. People needed wheelbarrows full of money just to buy basic goods like milk or bread. It became so extreme that at one point, the prices were doubling every few days. People's life savings were rapidly wiped out, causing widespread financial distress. Their economy was in turmoil and contributed to the loss of confidence in their government and its ability to manage the economy. It created an environment of chaos and desperation, paving the way for the rise of extremist political movements, including the Nazi Party. This serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of uncontrolled money printing and the disastrous impact that hyperinflation can have. That's why it is extremely important to have a government that respects the severe impact of their actions on the economy. Anyway, I hope you found this helpful in understanding a little bit more about inflation and its impact, and that you feel empowered to make informed financial decisions. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave me a thumbs up. I would love to hear from you. So if there is something you would like for me to speak on, please leave your requests in the comments below. Until next time, imagine the day when your money makes more than you do.